Green State University in 2012, and she has lived, worked, and studied in both Germany and in Austria, and taught German for 6 years. She joined the GAPP team as executive director in February of 2019. So we are very excited to hear your presentation, and I think GAPP is a great way to go to Germany for an exchange trip. So the floor is yours, Molly.
Thank you. Thank you, Avro. Again, as Avro said, my name is Molly Rowland, and I am the executive director of the German-American Partnership Program. I myself actually started taking German in high school and went on to study in college, as Avery said, so I also have a personal attachment to this program and know personally that there are many benefits to sending your students or going abroad with your students. So we'll talk more about what GAPP does and how we support you. So again, we're the German-American Partnership Program. Today I'll talk to you a little bit about GAPP and the exchanges, the outcomes for you and your school, so students as well as the school, the eligibility requirements to be a GAPP school, how GAPP can support your exchange, because these are teacher-led exchanges. We are supplying the logistics and the finances to a small degree, and the teachers are actually implementing the exchange. So we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. And then the next steps for you if your school is interested in starting a GAPP exchange. Okay, so our mission, as you can read here, basically is facilitating cultural exchanges that last, hopefully, more than just one exchange and lead to lifelong friendships. What we're hoping to do is for the students to have a real experience abroad that is more than just going to various buildings and taking pictures. So that's also a beneficial part of such an exchange, to go and visit the tourist sites, but what we want is for them to have a real authentic cultural experience in which they're living in host families and having an authentic experience and interacting with the locals and not just other tourists. Our goals then are to strengthen the international relations between the U.S. and Germany, to support German as a foreign language, and to allow your students to develop global awareness and intercultural competencies. So just a little bit about GAPP. We were founded in 1972. We are supported by both the German government and the U.S. government. Not every exchange has that seal of approval, so we're pretty proud of that. We have about 750 schools in our network here in the U.S. alone, active schools that travel every year or every other year. With that said, we have about 9,000 Americans participating in exchanges throughout the country each and every year. We are the largest bilateral exchange between the U.S. and Germany, and we as an organization are able to offer each school, most schools that travel, about $2,000 and $300 in grants and scholarship awards. That is not including, so that's a group grant, and we'll talk more about that shortly, but that does not include individual scholarships for students with high financial need, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. As you can see, just a little visual here, we are located throughout the country. Currently we're in 48 states. I'm working on Hawaii right now, but we are nearly everywhere, and I hope that we'll be in 50 states very soon. In Germany, as you can see, we're in all 16 federal states. So we're in 48 U.S. states and 16 federal states in Germany. In addition to being supported by the U.S. government and the German government, as seen here in the image, we are also supported by various foundations that allow us to offer individual scholarships to students with a high amount of financial need. So if you as a teacher decide, I want to start a GAPP exchange, I want to take my students abroad, but I'm at a Title I school, or I'm at a school where I know my students may have a high amount of financial need, we offer individual scholarships on an application basis. It's located on our website, and you would apply on behalf of your student, and they would write a short essay about their financial situation and why they want to go abroad. and we do our very best to support as many students as possible based on our sponsors and what they've given us and allocated for that year. Normally, as I said, we support as many students as we can. However, at this point, we accept a maximum of 5 applications per school. And then once we get towards the end of the school year, if we have remaining funds, then we absolutely open the floor up for you to apply for even more scholarships. But here at GAPP, we believe that each and every student should have the opportunity to travel abroad, regardless of their financial situation. So what is a GAPP exchange? GAPP exchanges are teacher-led, meaning that although we are giving you a little bit of the finances towards the trip is actually planned by the teacher. So you are the one finding a partner school, you are the one planning the exchange, and you are the one taking your students abroad or assigning another teacher at your school to take your students abroad. So our exchanges are reciprocal, meaning that you take your group over to Germany, and the group that you visit in Germany comes to visit you as well. Whether they visit first or you visit first is up to you and your schedule. Generally, the Germans will go over in the fall during their fall break for 2 weeks and visit the American group, and the American group will then go and visit the German group during summer. While you're spending time in the classroom in America as well as in Germany, German summer starts a bit later, so it's possible for the American group to go over in, say, July and visit a school and get the full experience. As I said, our exchanges are immersive, so you're living with a host family. The student is getting to know the culture and not just the tourist aspects, but the day-to-day life in Germany. So it's valuable for schools with and without German programs. Even if you're going over and visiting the school, you can visit English classes if your students don't speak German, and you can work on various projects, and we'll talk more about that shortly. But it is valuable whether you have that German component or not. Many of the German students speak English very well, and you're still getting that cultural component, and you're growing as your students are growing because they are going abroad and they are staying with a family that they don't know in a completely different environment, in a completely different culture. And that's something that not only is good for them personally, but it also looks excellent on college applications, for example. Not every student can say, especially in America, not every student can say that they've had such an experience. So what would the outcome be for students? We've talked a little bit about how they grow as people. Of course, they're adapting to a new situation. Here we have a student that said, my trip to Germany with GAPP was more amazing than I could have imagined. I now have a German family in addition to my own back home, new friends, and experiences I'll never forget. So it's obviously something that has a long-lasting impact. I get contacted from former students. I also led a GAPP exchange a few years ago, telling me just what an impact it's had on their lives and what they're doing with their skills now. Whether the students use German or not in the future, they are having this cultural experience that's allowing them to learn how to adapt and become more independent. And those are skills that can transfer into any job and help them usher them into adulthood, of course. So the outcomes for students are definitely that they're gaining this global perspective, of course, by living abroad for a short period of time. They're experiencing the real Germany, and that's what I like to say, the real Germany, not just a landmark, but actually interacting with the people. For those that have German at their school, it boosts their language skills. It gives them an opportunity to really practice their German in context. And from previous teachers, I've heard that their students are so excited because they've never had an opportunity to use their German before outside the classroom. So in the classroom, they're using their German because their teacher says they have to, or because they have a participation grade. But when they're in a context in Germany where they, for example, order an ice cream, or they are at the grocery store, it really just allows them to use this language and realize how this is a real language that I can actually use in context, and that really motivates students once they come back to continue with German. So if the school has German, it's a great way to make sure that the program continues. It also allows, obviously, for the students to develop confidence. You become a little bit more independent. Mom and dad aren't there. You have this new host family, and you have to learn to get along with them and maybe adapt to their culture. It allows you to form lifelong friendships. Many of my former students that travel with GAPP are still visiting their host families. Many of they have gone over again with their family to visit the host family. So these are friendships that often last a lifetime. And obviously it is fun, for sure. So what are the outcomes for teachers in schools? So one teacher said the GAPP exchange program is an educational experience that goes beyond the classroom. It encourages international understanding and is a positive influence on the world. So again, you're giving your students the students are getting a valuable experience outside of the classroom, which as teachers and students know, they're more likely to remember. They are more likely to remember the field trips they've gone on, the experiences they've had outside of the classroom, and this is one that really gives them the opportunity to broaden their horizons in an international context. Another teacher talks about how this is a ticket to our global world, and again, we are getting smaller just because of the internet. We are interacting with one another more often, and we need to be able to understand one another, and this allows our students to have the experience of being foreign, to have the experience of maybe not knowing exactly how to behave, and it allows them to adapt and to become more well-rounded global citizens. So for the teachers in schools, what this is really going to do is if your school has a German program, that will strengthen it. It builds community and recognition. So it has more than just an effect on the school. It has an effect on the community. I know at my previous school where I was running an exchange, people throughout the town knew our partner school in Germany. They knew different people from the town that had come to visit, and it really felt like this was our sister city. This was our exchange, and we were so proud of it as not just a school but a community, which really brought local officials in on it as well, and we had that support, which was amazing. We gained an international partner, obviously, whenever we went over to Germany, or whenever I personally went over or my students went over, we still had the support of that school there. Obviously, it goes without saying, for career development, this is definitely helpful. For students, you're thinking about college. It's obviously something that looks really good on a college application. Again, it's not just I traveled and I went on a bus and I took a picture of the Eiffel Tower or the Brandenburger Tor, but I actually went over and I actually had an experience where I was interacting with other people in a more organic way. So it's pretty exciting. The alumni, again, become these global citizens that are interested in succeeding in the world and doing various things. So it's not just about the German component, it's about the international component as well. How do you become a GAPP school? What you need is a GAPP coordinator, a teacher at your school that says, yes, I will do this. And in addition to that, you need to fulfill certain qualifications. So the school trip, or the exchange, should be 14 days long. That includes arrival and departure, so a minimum of 2 weeks. Of those 14 days, we want you to spend at least 10 days with your host families at the partner school. And then within those 14 days, at least 5 of them need to be at the partner school. So 14 days total, 10 days spent in host families, and at least 5 days spent in the host school. And then there is an exchange project or theme that your school will work on with your partner school. And these can be anything that you can think of, from sports to music to cooking. It just needs to have a cultural focus so that the exchange gives the student something that they can go home with. Okay, I learned that. GAPP costs depend on where you live, of course, because most of the cost comes from the flight. So it can be from about $1,200 to $3,000 per student. So that would include travel to the partner school, insurance, health insurance, liability insurance, local activities that you'll do in the host country, and then maybe a little bit of pocket money depending. We like for schools to keep their costs under about $2,500, which is feasible if you don't do a lot of additional side trips. But the idea is to keep these trip costs low to allow as many students as possible to be able to participate, because again, we at GAPP believe that you should be able to participate regardless of your financial situation because it is such a life-changing experience. We support 250 plus exchanges annually with group grants, meaning for each student you bring, there's a certain amount of money that we give you. Travel grants for teachers, we try to give about 75% towards a teacher's ticket so that the costs go down for the whole group. We also, as I said before, offer individual scholarships for students so that if they have a higher level of financial need, they're still able to participate. And then in addition to that, we have a few agreements with various airlines that offer you different deals, Lufthansa, Iceland Air, that you can call, and they will give you sometimes, buy 20 tickets, get 1 ticket free, things like that. But it's best to try to look at all different airlines just because you never know what the cost year to year. Sometimes Iceland Air is cheaper, sometimes Lufthansa, sometimes Delta. So it really just depends. At GAPP, in addition to providing a little bit of financial assistance, we also provide some logistical assistance. So we offer in-person and digital workshops for teachers that will show them how to plan an exchange and give them various suggestions. They are teacher-led, and it's up to the teacher to make that decision of how they want to plan it, but we give you the resources and the tools. We guide you in terms of insurance to make sure that students and teachers are covered logistically, so meaning with health insurance and liability insurance. And then we offer a network of experienced coordinators that can assist you with your questions. And we also offer online German language courses for our coordinators. So, what are your next steps if you're interested? Depends on if you're a student or a teacher. If you're a teacher, it would be to contact me at molly.rowland@Goethe.de, and I will type that out, hopefully, with any questions or concerns, and I can give you the materials you need to make your case at your school. If you're a student, it would be to talk to your German teacher or talk to a teacher that you trust, and then they can contact me and we can get the ball rolling. You can also fill out a brief form on Goethe.de/GAPP, and I can also send you our starter kit that will also help you, give you step-by-step instructions on how to get started as well. Are there questions?
Thank you very much, Molly. Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. I think this was very helpful for anybody who is interested in organizing an exchange trip to Germany, and I think it's a great help to have an organization like GAPP. So for our listeners, if anyone has a question, please type it into the chat window. But I would have some questions until maybe someone else also want to ask something. So regarding the grants, are all schools guaranteed group grants, or how does that work?
We are hopeful that we can support most schools, and in general we can support most schools. However, it depends on our funding from year to year, so some years we might not be able to support as many, in which case we would evaluate them based on whether they've turned in a complete application, is everything filled out that we asked for, is the school a Title I school, so they might need a little bit more assistance than another school, then we look at that as well. And then what's the diversity like of the group, because we also want to support diverse groups as much as possible. So those would be the 3 criteria that we would look at.
Okay.
But in general, we hope to support most schools.
How many students per school are able to apply for an individual scholarship?
5 students is the maximum at this point, but when it gets towards the end of the school year, if we haven't given out all of our grants, then we open it up to everyone again, and they're able to apply for additional grants. But just because of our finances at this time, we offer up to 5 grants per school.
Okay, and how does the individual program works, because like the group exchange program, then the whole group with the teacher together is traveling to Germany for 2 weeks, I think. And how does that work with an individual scholarship?
The individual scholarship would be applied for by the teacher on behalf of the student, and it goes towards their short-term exchange trip. So let's say you have a student that they cannot afford to come to Germany unless they get an individual scholarship from GAPP. Then you would apply, you would write a recommendation on their behalf, and then the student would also fill out a short form and write out why they need the scholarship. And then if I'm able to grant the scholarship, then I do, and I send it to the teacher, and the teacher uses it towards the student's cost for the trip.
And what if a group planned an exchange trip to Germany, but they have also plans to travel to another country within Europe? So I think especially for US American citizens, it's very interesting and appealing while traveling to Europe, not just to stay in one country, but like to see also other countries. Does that work? And if so, how?
It definitely does work, but I think I asked the coordinators to kind of keep in mind whether or not that's something that the parents and the students are hoping for, because it really makes the trip a little bit more expensive. But if it's something that the whole group is on board for and it's not going to cause any sort of financial difficulties for people, then it's definitely a wonderful thing to do. But that has to be done in addition to our requirements. So if you go over for 14 days and you want to spend 5 days in France, that's wonderful, but you can't. You have to spend at least 14 days in Germany, and then you could spend an additional 5 days, let's say in France, for example. So it's possible, but you just have to make sure that you still keep within the requirements of the exchange, because we're supporting you so that you go over and offer your students this experience in Germany and that they spend at least 14 days there, including arrival and departure.
Do you also assist or support with kind of preparation training before going to Germany, depending on, let's say, the language, the culture, the habits?
So we offer teachers different courses, and one of those is our intercultural communication training that's offered online, which allows the teachers to gain skills that they can then pass on to their students that kind of talk about the similarities and differences. And then within the school, many of our schools are German. Many of our schools are schools that offer German, and the German teacher has often been to Germany before, and then they themselves will also offer meetings to prepare their students to go to Germany. And additionally, we also have a handbook. Our new handbook is coming out soon, and the handbook has a list of cultural differences that are really important, ones that we've noticed in the past. We've received feedback from teachers on it, and so they gave that information to us, and I've incorporated it into the handbook so that the teachers are able to read it and then share it with their students as well.
So to speak German is required, right, for this exchange program? Is it a must? No, okay.
No, it is not required, actually. That is a good question. It used to be, up until a few years ago, that German was required. But however, as of the past couple of years, it is no longer required. It's absolutely, the majority of our schools offer German, and the idea originally was to have this exchange to keep German programs in the U.S. going, to give them a little more momentum. But what we're also discovering is, having since opened it to schools that don't offer German, that it's still, even if they're not benefiting from the language component, they're still going over, they're learning about Germany, they're getting excited about it. Some of them might end up taking German, let's say, in college, or they might want to study abroad in Germany, so it gets them excited about Germany. And in some cases, it's led to German programs opening at schools, which we hear a lot of times about German programs closing. It's also led us to opening some German programs, which is exciting as well.
That sounds very, very interesting and engaging. And I think especially for teachers, this is good to know that even if you have no German knowledge, or maybe just a little bit, that it doesn't exclude you from this program. And do you have maybe one last question? Maybe do you have a tip how to find a partner school? Because in the beginning you mentioned that the teacher themselves, they have to find a partner school as one of the first steps. And do you have a tip or recommendation how to start this process?
So a lot of schools come to us saying that they already have a school in mind, whether they're a German teacher and maybe have a connection, or they're not a German teacher but they have a connection to Germany. They have found a school already, and that's wonderful. As long as that school's administration, principal, for example, agrees to it, then that's wonderful. You're welcome to sign up as a GAPP school that way. We also have a website that teachers are able to go to that I believe I skipped over, which is called partnernetz.de. And schools in Germany that are looking for a partner school register on that site, and then American schools looking for a German school register on the site as well, and they write to each other. You can search, so for example, if you only want to take your students to a certain region, you absolutely have to go to Berlin, for example, you can weed it out, and you can click on the fact that you want to look for schools in Berlin, or if you're looking for a certain age group, we have groups, for example, from 4th grade up through 12th grade. So if you're looking, for example, only for an elementary school, you can also put that in the search box as well. So it really allows you to pick a school that might meet your needs, and then you can start writing to them on the platform. So that is the easiest way to do it. But as I said, if you have a school in mind, that's fine as well. But there are always lots of German schools looking for an American partner. So the American schools definitely have the advantage that they really can look and see what region they want, what age group they want, and they can really normally find a group almost exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. It shouldn't be too complicated then, because in the beginning I thought, okay, the teachers, they have to find themselves a partner school, and how does that work, and how do you contact them? But with this network or the schools, and especially because, I mean, I'm from Germany myself, and I know like the US is always very popular, and many of my fellow students, they went to the US for half a year, so it's very popular the other way around, so that's a good position for the schools here. Yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Our time is up, like, and in next minute we have the next presentation. Thank you very much. It was very helpful and informative. And for everyone else, if you want to share this knowledge or this presentation, maybe with your colleagues at school who might be interested in this program, or with your students, in the little box in the right corner below, you find the link to our YouTube channel, where you will find, like, at the end of this day or starting tomorrow, you will find all the presentations, and you can watch them again or share this with other people interested in this. Okay, thank you very much, Molly. Have a great day.